The results of the US presidential election took many by surprise, including possibly Donald Trump himself. There will be time to study what happened or didn't happen, but we urgently need to understand the consequences of Trump's re-election. What should we expect from the second Trump administration? And given that many sequels are worse than the original, how bad will it get? Hi, I'm John Nery, and you are in the Public Square. Let's study the political and strategic consequences of Trump's victory. Joining us are old friends of this program, retired Rear Admiral Rommel Jude and in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Ateneo de Manila Professor Arjan Aguirre. Welcome back, Admiral Ong and Professor Aguirre. Thank you for joining us again in the Public Square.
Hello, good evening. Thank you.
Good evening, Jan.
Let me start with Professor Arj. You're doing your PhD in one of the 7 swing states. Were you surprised at the outcome?
Honestly, before Kamala, took over as the presidential candidate, I was already expecting that it's going to be an uphill battle for the Democratic candidate. Mm-hmm. And when Kamala took over, she only had 107 days.
That's right.
To prove herself, as a viable, alternative to Donald Trump. And when I arrived here, one of the things that I've expected was, in Pittsburgh, especially, many people here are going to vote for Kamala Harris. And yes, they did. But unfortunately, counties surrounding Pittsburgh, Philadelphia was blue, but counties surrounding Philadelphia they were red. Mm-hmm. So that was my expectation. It's going to be an uphill battle, and it's going to be difficult for Kamala Harris. And when the surveys days before came out, I was really expecting that it's going to be a toss coin. But when the numbers are coming in, mm-hmm. I was really afraid that those swing states, especially Pennsylvania, would mm-hmm. Turn red, and yes, they suddenly turned red.
Yes, and amazingly, all 7 swing states ended up for Trump. Admiral, you in defense and national security circles must have scenario planned a Trump victory. Was it ever a likely scenario?
Well, to be honest, John, we don't normally track the domestic politics in the United States. Mm-hmm. But just to answer your question, we need to look at it from the perspective of what is the current policy of President Biden, mm-hmm. and comparing it with the policy posture of Trump during his first tour as the commander-in-chief in the United mm-hmm. States around 2016. So our benchmark is that Trump is wary of alliances, particularly with NATO. Second is he is transactional in his the way he approaches security relationship, meaning mm-hmm. what can you do for me, mm-hmm. Rather than asking the question of what can I do for you. So from there, this my personal take is that we need to do some sort of a form of plan B planning. Mm-hmm. While we look at China in terms of economic de-risking, we may also need to look at security de-risking for the United States, meaning let's look at diversifying our alliances and partnerships with other countries. Mm-hmm. Considering in the recent years, the support of the European Union states and, of course, Canada, Australia, Japan, South Korea has been forthcoming. And I think that this is something that we can go on in terms of looking at a Plan B scenario.
Admiral, thank you. You're known widely for your strategic insight. So you're saying that because Trump is NATO-averse and transactional, we need a Plan B to consider security de-risking ourselves from the United States. I'm going to go back to this whole issue about security and especially how it affects our positioning in the West Philippine Sea. Professor Arj, Trump said he would be a dictator from day one. I mean, he has modified that statement to say, even just for an hour or so on day one, he's going to do certain things. Should we take him at his word? Are we looking at a dictator in the making?
Well, for one, I would like to assume that, he's going to be old when, he assumes office next year. Don't forget that he's already 79 years old when he becomes president next year. So my assumption there is that he'll be more careful with whatever he's going to do, he plans to do, or whatever he will do in the next 100 days. So, but again, knowing Donald Trump, his first term was full of surprises. So we can also think that he's really capable of doing that, becoming a dictator just for a week or a month. Again, he's really capable, but again, we can also assume that this second term of Donald Trump is going to be different. So he may be entertaining the ideas or thoughts of becoming a dictator, but again, I'm assuming that he'll be more careful this time. He'll be more calculative.
Professor Arj, you're known. You're a young scholar, but you're known for your political insight. I'd like to know, why would he want to be dictator even for just a day? What is he planning to do? I mean, why did he say that, and what should we be looking out for?
Okay, so perhaps one of the things that that can explain why he said that is because of the election, environment or season. He really wants to court people when he said that. And I think that's one of the factors too, that many of his voters during his first run, and of course the second run, are still there for him for this third run. That's part of his script. That's part of his populist style. Now, the second explanation that that we can think of to make sense of this statement is perhaps he really wants to do so many things. Okay. When he assumes office. Remember, when he failed to get re-elected for his second term, many of his policies, many of his programs were reversed, and I think that's one of the first things that he will do. He will reverse those things that were done by the Biden administration. In particular, when it comes to immigration policies, when it comes to trade, tariff, policies. So again, those are the two explanations of that I can think of when it comes to that statement.
Thank you. I hope we'll have time to go back to that. Admiral, Trump has been very anti-China in his statements. But at the same time, he's expressed admiration for Xi Jinping, the way Xi Jinping conducts himself, and the way he leads. How should we understand Trump's positioning vis-a-vis China? And what should we expect in the next 4 years?
Well, I don't see any conflict now. Siguro, if you're a student of strategy or history, even if we know we are in the receiving end of China's aggressive posture, because sa West Philippine Sea, sa South China Sea, we may hate it because of its effects on us, but if you, objectively speaking, you can appreciate the strategy behind it. So maybe what Trump's admiration is based on is appreciation of the strategy that China is using or imposing. But of course, there is the other, on the back end of that would be, you have to address the problem as well, the immediate effects of that strategy. So in this case, we must remember that personally, I think it was Trump who got it right in terms of actually reading the room as far as the threat or the posed by China, not only to the region but also to the rest of the world. Okay? And he also got it right in terms of attacking the vulnerability ng China, which is the economic side, which would have the more significant effect. And I would always say that Biden's China policy is actually a continuation of Trump's policy during his first term.
It's a continuation of Trump's policy. Do we expect Trump, therefore, to continue supporting the Philippine position as far as the West Philippine Sea is concerned?
Well, the uncertainty as far as that question before the elections was there is this perception that even if Trump has the best advisors surrounding him, he can make decision on his own that totally debunks yung good advice from his,
That's right.
the people around him. So yun yung uncertainty. Now, based on his selection of candidates to fill up yung cabinet post niya for January, I think we can say na medyo positive yung outlook as far as Philippine interest is concerned. But of course, there is always that uncertainty na he will not follow yung advice of his cabinet. Okay. But that's something that we need to work with.
Professor Arj, one of the main issues that Trump ran on was immigration, illegal immigrants in the United States. And he promised a massive deportation. And he's already appointed someone who has a track record of deporting immigrants. I think it was the Philippine ambassador to the United States who said that we have something like 200 to 300,000 illegal Filipinos in the United States illegally, and they may be in danger of deportation. First, do you think that the deportations will in fact happen? Or will it just be like, Duterte style, no? Sa sampulan lang, no? They'll send home a few thousands and then forget about it. Or do you think that throughout the next 4 years, we will see a steady campaign to deport hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of immigrants, including Filipinos?
Okay, so I'll go back to what I have said earlier, that when he said those things, especially that statement, it was during the election, season. So he was campaigning. And don't forget, he won the first, attempt when he ran for presidency. For the second one, he failed. Now, for this third try, he really thought that, immigration is one of the things that, many Americans would like about him. And yes, it was effective. And I think that, he will be consistent with this, policy. But when it comes to, our Filipino immigrants in the United States, my assumption there is that the numbers that were given by our ambassador, to me, exaggeration siya. 250,000 to 300,000 illegal immigrants. I mean, to me, it's impossible. Many of our, Filipino immigrants here, many who are, here, living in the United States, don't forget, are working. They are mostly in the health sector. They're professionals. And I think the idea there that, they are living illegally is an old, bias toward our Filipino, overseas Filipino workers. Yun yung bias natin na kapag nasa abroad, mga walang papeles. Pero no, many of our Filipinos here, meron silang legal status. So that's my number one point about that statement. And then number two, kung meron mang illegals or merong mga illegal immigrants dito, I'm sure that, hindi sila yung priority ng United States of America because napakaliit ng population ng Pilipino na merong illegal na status dito sa United States. And that's one of the things na dapat nating i-consider, especially that, we are expecting this second Trump presidency na, yes, immigration will still be a top priority. But when it comes to our Filipino workers here in the United States, safe naman sila or hindi sila magiging priority ng US government. At kung meron mga illegal immigrant na status dito sa United States, maliit lang silang population.
Okay, this brings me to an issue that I think connects both of your fields. No, I have a different view on this, Professor Arj. I think that they will certainly deport as many as they can, maybe perhaps only in the first month or so, because that's part of the whole, easing the anxiety of white males in the United States. But my question, Admiral Ong, is that if this happens, and as Arj implied, many of these immigrants are the backbone of industries where Americans no longer want to involve themselves in, agriculture, services, and so on. We can probably expect some sort of turmoil, maybe not only political but economic turmoil. My question, Admiral Ong, is having Joe Biden have our back with a very strong American economy is one thing. What would it mean for the Philippine positioning in the West Philippine Sea if, let's say, 2 years from now, turmoil has overcome United States society or even just the U.S. economy because of actions like deporting millions of immigrants?
Siguro, John, I'll backtrack muna yung question on the illegal migration.
Okay.
Kasi we need to deconstruct that issue.
Mm-hmm.
There are two aspects ng migration issue ng US. Yung economic migration, be it legal or illegal, that's where our Filipino comrades in US are situated. But there are also those illegal migrants crossing the southern border,
mm-hmm.
and a certain percentage of them were profiled as coming from criminal organizations or from areas that have that are seeping into the U.S. mainland, that are not going to be integratable in the U.S. economy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think yung focus ng campaign ni Trump are in those illegal migrants that are profiled as part of criminal organizations,
mm-hmm.
or those that are involved in illegal activities that have an impact on peace and order in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So, if that is an assembly line of policy options, yung impact sa atin, Filipino nationals, would be sa dulo na. And I go by what Professor Arj mentioned earlier. Most of our Filipino nationals in the US, be it legal or illegal,
mm-hmm.
are integrated into the US economy. Mahirap tanggalin yun.
Mm-hmm.
Mahirap siyang i-alis doon. Okay? Ang most likely threat coming from Filipino nationals natin will be also coming from Filipino nationals reporting yung neighbors nila
mm-hmm.
na illegal migrants. Doon magagaling yung threat. Now, going to yung primary question mo dyan, I think it still falls under yung position ko earlier. We need to have a plan B in terms of diversifying our
mm-hmm.
alliance with the United States and our partnership with other countries. That would be hopefully mitigate yung worst case scenario that you are looking at. Now, one of the problems natin with the Biden administration in terms of its role as the quote-unquote global policeman, it has to have,
mm-hmm.
to me, hindi sila effective. That's why you have this conflict in the Ukraine versus Russia, then you have that in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody respects military power under this current time frame. We have been recipient of various commitments from the United States, but those are commitments, not hard power. And also, third, you have to look at yung situation ngayon sa Indo-Pacific. Most of the U.S. maritime capabilities are not here. They are in the Middle East. because they are embroiled in that, they were affected by that, the impact of yung conflict between Israel and the Hamas and Iran. The maritime power of the United States is in the Middle East, and it opens up a vacuum here in the Indo-Pacific, particularly the South China Sea. So, a potential turmoil in the United States because of Trump's policies now, in the forthcoming policies, will exacerbate yung situation natin.
Thank you. Professor Arj, I was looking at the numbers. The totals I don't think are yet are complete. But Trump has the presidency, and the Republicans have the U.S. Senate. Right now, we still don't know whether which party will have control of the House of Representatives. Can you draw for us what to expect if the Republicans flip the House and retain and get control, and what will happen? What should we expect if the Democrats? Sorry, my mistake. What will happen if the Republicans retain control of the House, and then what will happen if the Democrats flip the House?
Well, the assumption there is that it's going to be a smooth sailing, presidency for President-elect Donald Trump. If that happens, it will be a super majority. Their version, because here in the Philippines we're so familiar of that. The president, his party, they dominate the House and the Senate. Again, in the United States, it's a rarity, to see that you have a sitting Republican president and the Republican Party dominating both the Senate and the House. Now, when I say smooth sailing, again, the assumption there is that whenever the president has a particular program or policy, and if these policies, these priorities, they correspond to the very priorities or agenda of the leadership in the Senate or in the House. Again, you can expect a smooth passage of laws. And I think my assumption here is that for the first 100 days, the Trump presidency will basically deal with immigration issues, the economy, because that's one of the things that Trump became an appealing candidate for this election cycle. He was very clear when it comes to the economy. He will be protectionist. He will impose tariffs with other countries that they are trading with. So again, that's the assumption that whenever you have this dominance in the House and in the Senate, it will be easier for you to pass laws. It will be easier for you to come up with new policies that you can implement as the president.
But I have a question about assuming that things will go smoothly as far as governance is concerned. In the last 2 years, the House of Representatives was had a turbulent time. They had to change their Republican speaker, and under current Speaker Mike Johnson, it's been a study in chaos. It's very difficult for them to. He had to rely on Democratic votes to get certain things passed. Right now, during Trump's own, as Admiral would say, first tour of duty, he was not exactly known as a model leader or a consummate manager. Right? Why should we expect that he will be much more disciplined this time, that he will be more effective in marshaling support for his agenda? Why should he do that?
My understanding here is that this is his third attempt, and he won. He got the majority, the popularity vote. So to me, he's feeling vindicated. he'll have this, hubris on his. He'll have this, confidence to assert himself. When he wants to do something. And again, my thinking here is that he'll be more careful, he'll be more calculative, in the sense that I think he has learned these lessons, well during his first presidency. When I say calculative or more careful, he may still, get what he wants, but this time he'll make sure that people who will be part of his agenda, his plan, will not deviate. So I think that's one of the lessons that he has learned for his first term. That many of his henchmen turned against him later on. So this time he'll be choosing people, women, men who are really there to follow him. I mean, unquestionable loyalty. So again, we are expecting, cabinet secretaries, those people who will be part of his government to be loyal to him. So again, that's my assumption when it comes to more careful and calculative.
Speaking of loyal men and women, Admiral, I think yesterday we found out that his nominee for Secretary of State is Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who's an anti-China hawk. And then today we find out that he is nominating Army veteran and Fox News host Pete Hegseth as Defense Secretary. How do these appointments strike you? What kind of expectations do they set for you and others in national security circles?
Well, I think it reflects yung worldview niya, particularly with respect to China. So he's setting up a cabinet that is going to deal with China, both on at least this one is on the security side. We haven't seen his appointments on the economic side yet. So I would assume that this will complement yung team niya on the security side. Okay. So for us, again, based on the appointments that he's making or yung selections niya of candidates for cabinet posts, there would be a convergence in terms of yung impact sa national interest natin sa Pilipinas. Okay, but of course, again, the uncertainty there is yung there is a habit ni Trump of not following the advice of his inner circle. Mm-hmm. He has a potential of going rogue some of his decisions. Again, we are hopeful, as Professor Archer said, that maybe he'll learn this lesson after this is actually his third go at this as president, no? Having failed yung second one. So he has learned his lesson, and I think he's more selective in terms of the people that are surrounding him compared to yung previous yung first run niya. Okay. And of course, there are personalities there that are not there in his previous term. Like, for example, the more prominent one would be Elon Musk, who seems to be parang part of the family na niya in this undertaking now.
Yeah, so the world will have to depend on the possibility of a very old dog learning new tricks. I have a question for the both of you. What do we expect will happen now in Ukraine, in the war in Ukraine, and in the ongoing genocide in Gaza, now that Trump will be president? Maybe Admiral Ong first, and then Professor Arj.
Well, the key to the Ukraine-Russian conflict is providing Putin with an exit strategy out of that conflict. Mm-hmm. Okay. Kasi if you cannot provide him a viable exit strategy, he will just continue with this war of attrition. He's not winning, actually. Mm-hmm. Nobody's winning in that conflict. But he has no other options available to him right now that will save his face and save his regime. Mm-hmm. For the Middle East naman, the elephant in the room is Iran. Iran is the enabler of all these proxy wars that are happening around Israel. Mm-hmm. Hezbollah, Hamas, etc. Okay. So, if Trump is able to manage Iran, then I think we can see a scaling down of the conflict in the Middle East.
Thank you. Professor Arj?
For the Ukraine invasion, I'm expecting that Trump will try his best to, court Russia. I mean, during the time that he was president, he had close ties with Putin. So I guess that will be his plan to go to court, to pull back Russia and try to convince to de-escalate. But again, it's going to be difficult. Again, as mentioned by Admiral, the exit strategy to me is something that is elusive, for many world leaders, especially when you're dealing with Russia. It's going to be difficult. Now, for the conflict in the Middle East, the Hamas-Israel war, I'm so sorry, but I'm thinking that it will still be the same. The violence that we're seeing there. Mm-hmm. Trump, in fact, is expected to really, continue the struggle against, Hamas. The violence that was inflicted to this Israeli population. Mm-hmm. I'm just hoping that part of the strategy also of Trump is to convince Israel to de-escalate, because again, the violence that we are seeing in that region is actually causing thousands of dead people there. So I hope that this second Trump presidency will spearhead this route toward de-escalation.
Admiral, what kind of exit strategy will be possible for Russia as far as war in Ukraine is concerned? That would mean probably carving out some part of Ukraine and giving it to Russia, right? I mean,
I think the most viable would be yung 2014.
I'm sorry?
Whatever was occupied in 2014 would be up for negotiation.
I see.
So, but the centerpiece of that would be Crimea, I believe. Whether Ukraine will give up Crimea, willing to give up Crimea.
Professor Arj, a good number of Democrats either decided not to vote for Kamala Harris or actually voted for Trump because of the Biden administration's complicity in what is going on in the genocide in Gaza. But all signs point to an intensification of Israel's violence because they will enjoy the full support of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has said that. Of course, he is the U.S. president that allowed the controversial move of the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. None of his predecessors even dared to change the location. So Israel can depend on him in a way that it was not able to depend on Biden, given all that the U.S. government has done to make the violence possible in Gaza. How do you think this will play in those Palestinian American communities, or Arab American communities, for instance, in Michigan, where another swing state where, again, Kamala Harris lost, in part because of the Biden policy on Gaza?
Yeah. So number one about this issue of how the U.S. was handling the conflict in Israel, many of the former Biden voters did not actually vote for the presidency this recent
okay.
election.
Okay, can you expand on that?
Yeah, because many of the voters of the Democratic Party who voted for Biden in 2020 did not vote for Kamala this time because of that issue. If you have noticed, vote splitting became the norm, this past elections. And for this election, again, many of the Democratic, voters did not really vote for the presidency because of that. They really thought that, Kamala Harris's stand, her plans, to solve this problem, again, they were not enough. They were not, convinced. They were not happy with this. Now, for this, new Trump presidency, we can also expect that these people who are really, fighting for the end of this atrocity, this senseless killing that is going on in the region, again, they will continue to fight for this, this end of end of conflict. So I'm also expecting that, this Democratic Party, it seems that, they were decimated, but I'm also expecting that, a new individual or a new person would rise, and one of the things that will be used to rally the people for this Trump presidency is that issue, the Israel-Hamas conflict.
So that's exactly one thing that I've been keeping track of since election night. I wondered where did the Biden voters go? In 2020, 81 million Americans voted for Biden versus 74 million for Trump. I think the numbers aren't final yet, but I think the U.S. is looking at 2024 results in this way. About 78 million voted for Trump, and only 76 million voted for Kamala Harris. So there might be a missing block of about maybe, 4 or 5 million voters. It would be sad if, it's proven that they actually just shut it out. No? They thought, well, I can't be bothered to vote. Professor Arj, one more domestic issue, abortion. So Trump won in 2016, but in 2018, and then 2020, and then 2022, all these elections, abortion was a very powerful issue that galvanized Democrats. And those two midterm elections and then the 2020 presidential elections were good years, good elections for Democrats. What happened in 2024? Was abortion no longer a powerful issue even after the Dobbs Supreme Court decision? Or was it overwhelmed by other issues?
Yeah, perhaps. That's the latter. I mean, the issue of abortion, to me, it was overwhelmed by other issues. More specifically, economic issue. This is one of the top issues of American voters for this recent election, and that's the bad thing about the Kamala Harris campaign. They were not really clear about their economic plans. What they plan to do to recover. And then number two, again, don't forget that the Trump campaign was very consistent, very clear also with their campaign messaging. Immigration. Remember those lines that became popular this past months? Eating the dogs. Remember that line? It was very effective. It was very effective in the minds of the American voters, especially for those Trump voters. It's very clear that Trump is saying that immigration is still a problem, and they're causing problems in many of the urban areas. So again, that's going back to the point that the abortion issue, it was overwhelmed by other issues, and the Democratic Party, again, they also failed to use this issue, especially for women voters. To me, it became a secondary issue. And the campaign messaging that was used by the Harris campaign, was very weak. Again, my understanding there is that the Harris campaign only had 107 days to contest the presidency with Donald Trump. So it was an uphill battle. It's not a walk in the park on their part, and the abortion issue is one of the casualties of this half-baked campaign.
Thank you, Professor Arj. We're running a little long, so allow me to just ask two more questions to Admiral Ong before we call it a day. Admiral Ong, can you elaborate more on the Plan B that the Philippines must undertake? You spoke of deepening our alliances with Australia and so on. Can you talk about other aspects that we need to focus on?
Well, number one, when we look at the United States, there are some fundamental problems that it has to deal with. And it's not dealing with that problem right now under Biden administration. For example, I'll take this one example. Yung degradation ng industrial capacity nila to support yung maritime requirements nila as a sea power. So we have there is a significant drop already in the numbers of combatant vessels nila for the U.S. Navy since 2015. Okay. So actually, as we stand now, China has more ships, combatant vessels, than the United States.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a very fundamental problem that can only be addressed if you address yung industry side of the problem. That's gonna take some time kasi they deactivated yung shipbuilding capability nila and sent it abroad. Okay. So who are the shipbuilding capability powers now? Japan, South Korea, China. Okay. So that's the one. Second would be if you're looking at Plan B, on the assumption that Trump will be focused on domestic issues, migration, putting food on the table, mataas yung groceries nila doon, very expensive. So since they will be fixed on domestic issues, they will not be able to look at yung international issues like what's happening in the Indo-Pacific. So we need to look at yung countries surrounding us like Japan, Australia, South Korea as the foundation of sort of a mitigation plan. Because these are resident middle powers like us. We are stuck here in East Asia. We have to deal with the problem of China. We cannot avoid the problem of China. So we need to deal with it. So we work with these other middle powers and try to mitigate and offset yung limitations ng US for the time being until it's able to recover.
Thank you. Last question, Admiral Ong. Trump's re-election was helped by a massive alternative media ecosystem. I'm not just talking here of the Fox News and Sinclair networks, but very popular podcasts like Joe Rogan's and so on, and a social media game that was simply not available or used by the Democrats. What can we learn from this for the Philippine context?
Actually, we've learned that lesson in the previous election. The US is just learning it now.
Yes.
Parang deja vu nga eh. If we look at what's happening in the United States now, nangyari na sa atin before, in the 2016 and in the 2022 elections. The advent of social media and the technology associated with social media has actually opened up the avenues for not only information, the other one is disinformation, okay, in the public opinion space. So this is something we need to deal with in terms of putting across messages and information as well.
Thank you. There is so much more to discuss. I will have to return to this topic in the near future. But that is all the time we have today. Thank you, retired Navy Admiral Rommel Ong and Professor Arjan Aguirre for helping make sense of Trump 2.0. Thank you again.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And that's it for us today. The next step for engaged citizens, as always, is to take a more active part in our democracy. Download the Rappler Communities app to join the chat room of your choice. Thank you. This is John Nery. See you in the public square.